Have you ever stopped to wonder what really holds a huge organization together? It's not just the talented people. It's the invisible rules they all play by. We got our hands on a 100-page policy manual, and we're going to deconstruct it to show you the hidden architecture of leadership. This thing is literally the blueprint for how every big decision gets made. So, let's just start with a really big question. When you've got an organization that's serving thousands of people, juggling complex issues, managing millions of dollars, who is actually in charge? Who does the buck really stop with?
Well, the answer might actually surprise you. It's a volunteer board of directors.
Yeah, a group of people from the community who are so committed they aren't even paid for their time. And their guide, their rulebook, their entire philosophy for how to run the show, it's all packed into this one powerful document, the policy manual. Okay, so how does a document like this actually turn big ideas into real-world action? Here's the roadmap for how we're going to break it all down. We're going to start with the overall blueprint, then look at how the board leads from a distance, how they plan for the future, how they guard the mission, and finally, how they manage the money. All right, first up, the governance blueprint. And I want you to think of this as way more than just a simple rule book. It's a really carefully designed framework for leadership. Its whole purpose is to make sure everybody knows their job and the entire organization stays on course. So the best way to get your head around this is with a simple analogy. The board of directors, they're like the architect. They dream up the vision, they approve the big plans, and they set the overall direction. Then you have the executive director, or the ED. They're the master builder, taking those architectural plans and actually making them a reality with their team on the ground. And at its heart, the board's entire job, everything they do, can be boiled down to these 6 core responsibilities. Everything from setting the grand mission to making sure they themselves are effective is covered right here. Every single decision they make, every policy in this whole manual, ties directly back to one of these 6 functions. And that leads us perfectly into our next section, leading from a distance. This is all about what is maybe the most critical relationship in the entire organization, the one between the board and the executive director. And this is where that architect versus builder idea really comes to life. See, the board governs. They set the what and the why. The ED manages. They handle the how. This clear separation is absolutely vital. It keeps the board focused on that 30,000-foot view, and it stops them from getting tangled up in the day-to-day operational weeds. Now get this. This single sentence from the policy manual, it's the linchpin of the entire structure. It means a board member can't just walk into an office and start giving orders to a staff member. Nope. All communication, all direction has to flow through one single point of contact, the executive director. It creates this perfect, unbreakable chain of command. Great governance isn't just about what's happening right now. It's about protecting the future. So this next section shows how the manual builds in these processes to make sure the organization is always ready for leadership changes and is constantly getting better. So how do you hold the most senior person in the whole organization accountable? Well, the manual lays out this really comprehensive review process. And what's cool is that feedback doesn't just come from the board. It's gathered from the ED's own team and even from partners out in the community. It ensures a complete 360-degree picture of performance right at the very top. And it's not just about the ED. The board has to plan for its own future too. This timeline shows that they're not just randomly picking new members. They use something called a skills matrix to see what expertise they might be missing, like maybe they need a lawyer or a finance expert, and then they strategically go out and recruit people to fill those gaps. It's all about building the best possible team of architects. Okay, now let's look at how the manual acts like a shield, how it protects the organization's integrity, its ethical standards, and its core mission. These are the rules that really maintain trust with the public and with the people they serve. So here's a classic governance dilemma, a real headache. What if a board member's private company is bidding on a contract with the organization? How in the world do you handle that to make sure everything's fair and there's not even a hint of improper influence? The manual provides a crystal clear 3-step protocol. You disclose the conflict, you leave the room, and you let the rest of the board vote. There's no gray area here. This kind of transparency is absolutely essential for neutralizing these potential conflicts and keeping the public's confidence.
The manual even goes so far as to define a concept like quality. This isn't just some buzzword they throw around. No, it's a formal commitment. It's a measurable standard that the board holds itself and the entire organization accountable to achieving. It's basically a promise of excellence, written down.
All right, let's get to the final, and let's be honest, maybe the most critical piece of this entire puzzle: managing the money. How does the board, from its high-level architect position, make sure that every single dollar is being handled responsibly?
This simple table is just a perfect example of smart financial control. It clearly delegates spending authority. A manager, for example, can approve something up to $2,000, but anything more than that needs a higher level of sign-off. Now, the executive director has unlimited authority, but, and this is key, only within the budget the board has already approved. Now, this number, $125,000, it highlights another really critical control. The policy says that any single payment for this amount or more can't be approved by just one person. It requires 2 signatures from specific people. It's a classic 2-key system, a really simple but powerful safeguard against fraud. So when you step back and look at the whole thing, it all comes down to this. From the leadership structure and the performance reviews to the ethical rules and the financial controls, every single policy in this manual is designed to do one thing. It's all about building and protecting public trust by being accountable.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? We've just deconstructed the blueprint for one organization. But what about all the other institutions in our lives? Our local governments, our schools, the hospitals we rely on. What's their unseen architecture? What set of policies is holding them accountable? It's definitely a question worth asking.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're doing something a bit different. We've got our hands on, basically the ultimate accountability blueprint.
Yeah, it's the complete board policy manual for CMHA Waterloo Wellington. It's and not often you get this kind of look behind the curtain.
Exactly. So for anyone wondering how a complex nonprofit health organization really governs itself, manages risk, this is it.
It really is the architecture, a study in structured governance, you might say.
And our mission today, yours and mine, is to kind of extract that blueprint. We want to see how a high-performance board works, focusing on, core duties, accountability, and especially risk control through these super specific policies.
Okay, so where do we start? Well, the foundation is their governance philosophy. They've adopted the modified Poynter-Orlikov model.
Modified Poynter-Orlikov, okay.
And that choice, right away, it signals they want clarity. They break the board's work down into 3 main roles: policy formulation,
right, yeah,
decision-making,
okay,
and oversight.
Standard enough, but you mentioned modified, and I noticed that too. Standard models often list 5 core areas, right? But these guys add a 6th.
Precisely. So the usual 5 are strategic direction, making sure management's excellent, quality and effectiveness, financial viability, and board effectiveness itself.
Got it.
The modification, the 6th one they add, is fostering relationships.
Oh. Interesting.
Yeah. It's like a formal nod that, dealing with the outside world, advocacy, community ties, that's just as vital as keeping the books balanced inside.
So the board has to look outwards, not just inwards. Makes sense. Yeah. And this whole commitment, it starts with how individuals act, doesn't it? The source said directors have to speak with one voice.
Absolutely fundamental. Once the board decides, even if you personally voted against it, say 6-5.
You lost.
You lost. You still walk out of that room supporting the decision publicly. It stops the organization and, crucially, the executive director from getting mixed signals.
Yeah.
Ensures credibility.
Okay, that makes sense. It sets the stage. So let's transition now into what I found really fascinating, the structural barrier, the board management firewall. Policy 2002, right? It basically nails down the ED's role.
It does. It draws a really clear line. The board handles policy, management handles doing the work, the execution.
So the board directs through policy.
Exactly. And the ED is accountable directly to the board for all the operations, the administration. It sounds simple, but it's the way they enforce that separation that's key.
And that way is
defining the ED, the executive director, as the board's sole official connection to, everything else. The staff, the achievements, the conduct, everything.
Sole official connection. Why is that specific phrase so important day to day? What does it actually do?
Well, think about it. It protects the staff. mainly. It stops, 10 different board members wandering around asking staff questions, maybe giving suggestions or even directions.
We might conflict.
Totally conflict. It creates chaos. So the ED is the single point of contact. It keeps the board governing, not micromanaging.
Right. And to really build that firewall, there are specific rules for board members' conduct.
Oh, yeah. Very clear. Individual board members, they just can't express judgments about staff performance. Like, at all.
Really?
Well, the only exception is when they're giving formal, structured input for the ED's own annual evaluation. That's it.
Keeps things tidy.
Very. And it works the other way, too. If staff or even the ED have issues or judgments about the board, that feedback has to go through the ED, who then takes it to the board chair. It keeps the communication channel really tight, professional.
Okay, so given all that responsibility on the ED's shoulders, the qualifications must be pretty high.
They are. It's a high bar. You're looking at a graduate degree, probably focused on health or social services management.
Makes sense.
Plus 7 to 10 years of senior management experience, specifically in that sector. And on top of that, professional certification, like the CHE, the Canadian Healthcare Executive Designation, or something equivalent.
Wow, okay. That's serious. Not just anyone can step into that role.
Not at all. And their reporting requirements. They mirror those 6 board responsibility areas we talked about earlier.
Brings it full circle.
Exactly. The ED constantly has to show the organization is on track. Reports on strategic goals, the quality improvement plan, detailed financials, compliance with laws, HR stuff, making sure they're delivering on funder contracts. It's a complete accountability loop.
Okay, so we've got the ED's role defined. Now let's shift focus back to the board itself. How do they structure that body to make sure it keeps going effectively, avoids getting stale?
Right. So the board size is set at 11 voting directors, plus the ED is there too, but as a non-voting ex officio member.
11 voting members.
Yes.
And their terms.
3-year terms, and you can serve up to 3 consecutive terms, so 9 years max.
9 years. Why that limit?
It seems to be a common balancing act, long enough to really learn the ropes, gain deep knowledge.
But not so long you become like part of the furniture.
Exactly. Prevents entrenchment, encourages bringing in fresh perspectives periodically.
And when they are bringing in new directors, they're looking for more than just, say, a finance expert or a lawyer.
Oh, absolutely. Before they even get to the specific skills, the policy lists the baseline stuff. Personal and professional integrity, wisdom.
Wisdom. How do you measure that?
Good question. But it's listed. Also, commitment to the mission, the vision, the values, and crucially, the ability to work cooperatively. The people skills come first.
Okay. But then comes the technical part, the collective skill matrix. This sounded really deliberate.
It is. They're not just taking the first 11 qualified people who apply. They're actively building a board where the whole group collectively has a specific mix of skills.
Like what kind of skills are non-negotiable?
Well, the expected ones. Strategic planning, finance, accounting, legal know-how, HR management, quality, and risk management.
Standard toolkit for a board.
Pretty standard, yes. But what really jumped out at me, especially for this kind of organization, is the mandatory inclusion of lived experience.
Lived experience. Wow, that's powerful. So alongside a lawyer and an accountant, you need someone who has perhaps personally navigated the mental health system.
Precisely, or has supported a family member. It ensures that the board's decisions, even the really technical or financial ones, stay grounded in the reality of the people they serve. It's a formal way to fight mission drift.
That's a really strong statement about their values.
It is.
Okay, speaking of keeping things going, succession planning. Not just for the board, but specifically for the ED.
Yes, and it's a formal requirement. The board demands a documented process for filling the ED role, whether it's a sudden vacancy or something planned, like retirement.
And whose job is it to create that plan?
Interestingly, the accountability falls squarely on the current ED.
Really? They have to plan their own replacement?
Yep. The policy says the ED has to, on an annual basis, identify and actually cultivate potential successors from within the organization or the sector. At least one person who could, theoretically, take over immediately if needed, and maybe 1 or 2 others on a longer development track. It builds that internal pipeline, makes the continuity less of a crisis.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty, the checks and balances. This is where the board really exercises its oversight, especially around risk. Quality and safety seem like a big focus.
Huge. They have an integrated quality and enterprise risk management framework. It's not just an afterthought. It's core infrastructure.
And who watches that day to day or quarter to quarter?
That falls to a specific committee, the Performance, Quality, Risk, and Ethics Committee. PQRE for short, I guess.
Catchy.
Yeah. And they're not waiting around for year-end summaries. They monitor service quality targets, client safety metrics on a quarterly basis.
Quarterly. That allows for pretty quick course correction if something's going off track.
That's the idea. Rapid identification, rapid response.
And they take it public. The quality stuff.
They do. The policy commits the organization to public reporting of its quality and client safety indicators.
Yeah.
It's about transparency, sure, but also
Drives improvement.
exactly. When you know your results are going to be out there, it adds another layer of motivation for continuous improvement, accountability to the community, not just the board.
Okay, now the money.
Yeah.
The financial controls looked incredibly tight. Let's start with fraud.
Yeah, they're very proactive here. The ED is required to give the Resources Committee a written report specifically on fraud risks and the prevention strategies they have in place
Okay.
every single year. And critically, this happens before the external auditors even come in. They want to address risks internally first.
Smart. But the detail that really made me pause was the spending limit on the ED. What was it?
This is quite something. The ED cannot spend any unbudgeted reserves or surplus funds above $25,000 without getting prior approval from the board. Policy 4005.
$25,000. For potentially a very large organization, that seems tiny.
It is tiny. It's an incredibly tight leash. It's more than just a rule. It feels like a philosophical stance. Like absolutely zero tolerance for surprise spending. The board maintains complete control over any significant shift in how money is used.
Wow, no room for error or sudden great ideas that cost money.
Pretty much. And that's reinforced by the reporting. Monthly financial statements are mandatory.
Monthly, okay.
And if any line item varies from the budget by $10,000 or more, up or down, a written explanation is required.
$10,000. Again, super granular control. It forces management to be watching every penny.
Meticulously. They have to know exactly what's happening financially all the time.
Okay, one last piece in this section, which was also a bit surprising.
Yeah.
Ethical investing.
Right. So the basic goal is standard. Maximize return, minimize risk. But then they add this whole ethical layer. Policy 40116.
How did that work?
Basically, the organization's mission promoting health and well-being overrides the pure profit motive in investments. They're explicitly willing to potentially accept lower returns.
If the money comes from somewhere dodgy.
Exactly. If the source of the income conflicts with their core mission.
And then they spell it out. What's off limits?
Oh yeah, it's a very specific list. No investments where the primary income source is from armaments, tobacco, alcohol, specifically marketing, manufacturing, or retail.
Yeah.
Also gambling, like casinos or slot machines, pornography, and interestingly, cannabis operations too.
Huh. Cannabis too.
Yep. It's a clear line in the sand. They're saying, we won't profit, even indirectly, from industries that we see as harming community health. It's a strong ethical statement tied directly to their investment strategy.
Okay, so we've seen the structure, the controls. How do they maintain the integrity of the board itself? Confidentiality seems important. They use in-camera sessions.
Yes, for the really sensitive stuff. Things like personnel issues, legal matters, maybe some very specific financial negotiations.
And what does in-camera mean in practice?
Strict rules. All non-board members are out, unless specifically invited for a particular item. Any documents discussed are marked confidential and have to be secured properly. It protects the organization legally and respects individual privacy.
But sometimes transparency is needed, like with conflicts of interest.
Absolutely critical. Policy 5007 lays it out. Directors have a strict duty to declare any potential conflict, personal or financial, immediately.
And what happens if they do? Or if the board thinks there might be one?
The board decides. A simple majority vote determines if a conflict actually exists, and if it does,
The director is out.
out of that specific discussion and vote yes. They have to abstain from the debate, can't vote, and crucially, they don't even count towards the quorum needed for that decision.
So the decision is made only by those without a conflict.
Exactly. Ensures the organization's best interest is the only thing on the table.
Okay, final point. The ultimate accountability.
Yeah.
What happens if a director just isn't pulling their weight? Or worse, let's start with just not showing up.
There's a policy for that, an explicit attendance policy. If you miss 50% or more of your board meetings or your committee meetings over a 12-month period.
50%, that's quite a lot of meetings.
It is, but if you hit that threshold and you don't have an acceptable reason approved by the board, you're considered to have automatically vacated your position.
Wow, automatic. No vote needed.
Seems like an automatic trigger based on the policy wording, sort of a you resign by default situation for chronic absence.
Okay, and what about removal for more serious things, like breaking confidentiality or not declaring a conflict?
That's possible too, but it's designed to be a very serious, deliberate, and actually quite difficult process. Policy 5010 covers this.
Difficult how?
Well, first, it requires calling a special meeting of the members of the corporation, not just the board, but the wider corporate membership.
Okay, that's a big step.
And then to actually remove the director, it requires a 2/3 majority vote of that entire membership.
2/3? That's a very high bar.
Extremely high. It protects the board from instability, prevents removals based on minor disagreements or, political infighting. It ensures removal is only for truly serious breaches. Hashtag tag outro.
Well, let's try and wrap this up. We've looked at this incredibly detailed governance blueprint from CMHA Waterloo Wellington. What are the big takeaways for you?
Well, for me, it's the sheer intentionality of it all, the low tolerance for financial surprises, that 25K limit,
Yeah.
the mandatory skills matrix that explicitly includes lived experience alongside technical skills, that strong firewall between the board and management channeled through the ED, and those ethical lines drawn on investments. It's all very deliberate.
It really paints a picture of governance as this, relentless structured effort to mitigate risk at every turn, enforced by incredibly specific policies.
And high expectations for everyone involved, especially the directors.
Right. Which brings me to a final thought, something that maybe leaves listeners pondering. We talked about that policy, 5001, that says directors must speak with one voice even if they disagreed internally.
Support the decision publicly.
And then we saw policy 5010, the removal policy, requires that super high 2/3 majority vote of the members. It's hard to get rid of someone.
Very hard. Designed for stability.
Okay, so you have this system that demands absolute public unity and loyalty from directors, even after losing a vote. But it also makes removing a director for, say, failing in that loyalty incredibly difficult.
There's a tension there, yeah.
So the provocative thought is this. Given that structure, the pressure to conform publicly, and the difficulty of formal removal, how much does this whole elaborate system really rely on the paper policies versus the fundamental inherent ethical commitment of each director before they even walk into the boardroom? Does the policy create the integrity, or does it just provide a framework to test the integrity that hopefully was already there from day one?
That's the million-dollar question in governance, isn't it? How much can the rules guarantee versus the quality of the people you select in the first place?
Something to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
My pleasure. Fascinating stuff.